In the 1970s, a quiet fear settled over the mountains of South America. Across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, hundreds of young girls were vanishing. They disappeared from busy markets, from quiet village streets, from the very steps of their homes. Their families searched for years, their pleas for help lost in the vastness of the Andes. No one knew who was taking them, or why. Then, police finally captured the man responsible, and the world was left stunned. His name was Pedro Alonso López, a man who would forever be known as the Monster of the Andes. Pedro Alonso López was born on October 8, 1948, in Tolima, Colombia, the seventh of 13 children. His childhood was not one of innocence, but of brutal violence and chaos. His mother was a prostitute, and Pedro grew up lost in a world of poverty, profound neglect, and abuse. At just 8 years old, after being caught touching one of his sisters, his enraged mother cast him out onto the streets. Homeless and utterly alone, Pedro was taken in by a man who promised him safety, but delivered only more horror. The abandoned boy became filled with a cold, simmering hate and a deep mistrust of the world. By the time he was 12, Pedro had fled to Bogotá, the capital. He learned to survive by stealing cars and selling stolen goods. But with every passing day, his anger toward the world grew darker and more twisted. In 1969, López was arrested for car theft and sent to prison. Behind bars, he claimed he was attacked by several men. In retaliation, he murdered 3 of them. According to his own chilling confessions later on, that was the moment he discovered he could kill without a shred of remorse. When he was released from prison in 1978, Pedro López didn't stay in Colombia. He began a journey through Peru, Ecuador, and eventually back into his home country. His targets were always the same, the most vulnerable young girls between the ages of 8 and 12, almost always from poor, rural communities who were least likely to be missed. Pedro López's crimes followed a horrifyingly consistent pattern. He would visit crowded marketplaces or remote villages and patiently watch. He would then approach a little girl, offering a small gift, a toy, some candy, or a false promise of work for her family. Once he had gained their trust, he would lead them away from the crowd to a secluded spot in the hills or countryside. There, he would assault and strangle them before burying their small bodies in shallow graves. He later confessed that he often returned to these graves, sitting beside them for hours, reliving his monstrous acts. By 1979, the number of missing children had risen so dramatically across 3 countries that parents and police were growing desperate. But no one connected the dots. No one realized that a single man was responsible for it all. The year is 1980, in the city of Ambato, Ecuador. López was in a busy market, attempting to lure a 9-year-old girl away from her mother. But this time, someone was watching. A group of merchants noticed his suspicious behavior and intervened, stopping him in his tracks. They held him until the police arrived. At first, López was silent, but as the interrogation continued, he began to crack. He confessed to killing young girls, not just in Ecuador, but in Colombia and Peru as well. To prove his claims, he led officers to several burial sites in rural Ecuador. As police began to dig, they uncovered the remains of over 50 young girls, all buried in neat, orderly rows. López showed no emotion. In fact, he told the horrified officers that the discovery made him happy. During questioning, Pedro López made a statement that would shock even the most hardened detectives. He claimed to have killed more than 300 girls, roughly 100 in Colombia, 100 in Ecuador, and another 100 in Peru. They were all pretty little girls, he said calmly. It was like eating chicken. I did it calmly. His words were so detached, so devoid of humanity, they were almost unbelievable. The sheer scale of his crimes was unlike anything the world had ever seen before. In 1980, Pedro López was convicted of 110 murders in Ecuador, the only country where the evidence could be fully confirmed. He was sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed by Ecuadorian law at the time, just 16 years in prison. The verdict sparked global outrage. A man who had confessed to hundreds of murders could be free in less than 2 decades. While imprisoned, he showed absolutely no remorse. He frequently gave interviews to journalists, calmly discussing his crimes and chillingly describing himself as the man of the century. Then, in 1994, after serving only 14 years, Pedro Lopez was released early for good behavior. Authorities deported him back to Colombia, where he was briefly held in a psychiatric hospital. In a decision that defies belief, doctors declared him sane and fit for release. Just 1 year later, he vanished. To this day, no one knows for certain where Pedro Lopez went. Some unconfirmed reports claim he was arrested again in 2002 for another murder, but no official record exists. His current whereabouts remain unknown, and Interpol still has an active warrant for his arrest. The crimes of Pedro Lopez left a scar of unimaginable grief across 3 nations. He is believed to be one of the most prolific serial killers in history, with a confessed body count higher than any single murderer on record. But what's most disturbing is not just the terrifying scale of his crimes, but the silence that allowed them to happen. Many of his victims came from poor, indigenous families. Their disappearances were ignored for years, buried beneath layers of poverty and societal neglect. Even today, in parts of Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, his name is spoken only in whispers, a cautionary tale used to warn children not to wander off alone. Pedro Alonso López, the monster of the Andes, remains a chilling reminder of how profound evil can hide behind the most ordinary of faces. His victims, young and full of life, never had a chance to grow up. And though decades have passed, true justice for many of them has never come. He was called a monster, but the truth is far darker. He was human. Thank you for watching Dark Truth Files. Subscribe for more real crime documentaries and stories the world tried to forget.